Hello, everyone. Welcome back to my YouTube channel. I don't know about you folks, but the second I saw what was coming for Drew and Nina this week, I just leaned back in my chair and thought, well, here we go. This is exactly the kind of General Hospital story that keeps me coming back year after year. Just when everyone thinks they've got the situation under control, one tiny moment changes everything. And if I'm reading this right, that one moment is about to turn Nina's whole world upside down. I've been waiting for Drew to fight his way back, and I have to say, seeing him finally speak again feels like a huge turning point. For months, the poor man sat there trapped inside his own body while everyone around him believed he couldn't tell the truth. That kind of situation always gets under my skin because it's hard watching someone know exactly what's happening but have no way to stop it. Then suddenly, there he is at the Quartermain boathouse, sitting near the lake while Nina helps him into his wheelchair. And those first real words come out. Good Lord, I can only imagine the look on Nina's face. If I were standing there, I'd probably freeze, just like she does. Sure, Nina has known this day would eventually arrive, but knowing something is coming and actually seeing it happen are two very different things. The second Drew speaks, every lie, every secret, and every terrible choice made over these past months starts crashing together like a runaway train. That's the moment when reality finally catches up with everyone. And let's not forget how this nightmare even started. Willow wasn't acting alone. Jen Sidwell handed her the drugs that made Drew appear to have suffered a stroke and left him trapped in that helpless condition. I don't care how clever anyone thinks they are, schemes like this always have an expiration date. Once Sidwell was taken into custody, the clock started ticking. Willow lost the one thing keeping her plan alive, and now she's watching Drew recover little by little. That's enough to make anyone who's hiding a secret lose sleep at night. What makes this even more fascinating to me is that Drew isn't waking up confused. No, sir. He remembers exactly what happened. He knows who put him in that wheelchair. He knows Willow shot him twice. That's the kind of knowledge that changes everything. You can almost feel the pressure building because the moment Drew is strong enough to tell his story, Willow's carefully built life could collapse overnight. That's why her desperation suddenly makes perfect sense. She isn't looking for leverage because she wants more power. She's looking for leverage because she's terrified. She knows Drew could destroy her future, expose everything she's done, and even fight to take her children away from her once he's back on his feet. Ain't gonna lie, fear can push people into making even worse decisions than the ones that got them into trouble in the first place, and that's exactly what I think we're about to witness. But here's the twist that really grabbed my attention. Just when I thought this story couldn't get any messier, Jack Brennan's black suitcase entered the picture again. Brennan has evidence powerful enough to blackmail Drew, yet that suitcase is no longer where it belongs. Somehow it's disappeared, and now Valentine Cassadine has it. Now that's the kind of surprise that makes me smile, because whenever Valentine gets his hands on something valuable, you just know he isn't going to waste the opportunity. If that evidence comes into play while Drew is recovering and Willow is panicking, I honestly think this storyline is about to explode in ways none of us are expecting. The more I think about Willow's situation, the more I realize she's been living on borrowed time. From where I'm sitting, every single day has probably felt like a countdown she couldn't stop. She kept using the last of those paralysis drugs because she believed they were the only thing standing between her and complete disaster. As long as Drew stayed trapped inside that wheelchair, unable to fully communicate and unable to fight back, she could still convince herself that she had one more day to figure out a way out of this mess. But that's the problem with lies. They always demand more lies to keep them alive. Sooner or later, the foundation begins to crack, and I think that's exactly what we're about to witness. What really caught my attention is that Drew doesn't seem like the same helpless man we watched just a few weeks ago. Little by little, he's becoming more alert. His eyes seem sharper. His mind appears clearer. Even before anyone around him realized it, there were signs that he was fighting his way back. We already learned that he quietly whispered Willow's name when nobody else was around to hear it, and now he's finally speaking directly to Nina. To me, that isn't just another small step in his recovery. That's the beginning of an avalanche. Once someone finds their voice again, it's almost impossible to silence them. I honestly can't imagine what must be running through Nina's mind when Drew suddenly looks at her and speaks so clearly. Sure, she's been aware this day would eventually arrive. She and Willow have both known that the drugs couldn't work forever. But there's a huge difference between preparing yourself for something in theory and having it happen right in front of your eyes. I can almost picture her heart racing the instant she hears Drew's voice. Every terrible decision she's helped cover up would come flooding back in a matter of seconds. The setting itself makes everything feel even more dangerous. The Quartermain Boathouse has always been one of those places where people think they can hide from the rest of Port Charles. It's peaceful. It's quiet. The lake almost gives you the illusion that nobody else exists, but that's exactly why I don't trust it. In this town, peaceful places have a funny habit of becoming the scene of complete chaos. All it takes is one family member taking a walk, one employee passing by, or one unexpected visitor showing up, and suddenly there are witnesses everywhere. That's why I believe Nina's panic could become even more dangerous than Drew's recovery. If Drew continues talking, he isn't just making conversation. He could call for help. He could start naming names. He could accuse Willow of shooting him. He could reveal that his stroke wasn't natural at all. He could expose every secret that Nina has desperately tried to keep buried. Once those words start coming out, there's no putting them back in the bottle. They would spread through Port Charles faster than wildfire. When people become frightened, they don't always make logical decisions. I've lived long enough to know that fear can overpower common sense in the blink of an eye. Nina may not have any intention of hurting Drew, but if she suddenly believes everything is collapsing around her, instinct could take over. That's the part of this story that really makes me nervous. They're standing right beside the water. Drew is still sitting in that wheelchair. He's stronger than he was, but he hasn't regained full control of his body. One sudden movement, one stumble, one desperate attempt to stop him from shouting, and that wheelchair could roll toward the edge before anyone realizes what's happening. Can you imagine how horrifying that moment would be? Drew, finally able to speak after months of silence, suddenly finding himself sinking into the lake instead of finally escaping his nightmare. It almost feels cruel to even think about. His mind may be awake, but his body simply isn't ready yet. He wouldn't have the strength to pull himself free. He wouldn't be able to swim like he normally could. Every second underwater would become a race against time, and everyone standing nearby would have to decide whether to save him or let fate take its course. And that's where I think this storyline becomes much more emotional than it first appears. Nina has never struck me as someone who truly wants blood on her hands. She's made terrible mistakes before, just like plenty of people in Port Charles, but there's a line that changes a person's life forever. If Drew goes into that water because of one panicked reaction, intentional or not, I believe Nina would carry that guilt for the rest of her life. Sometimes the worst tragedies aren't carefully planned at all. Sometimes they're born from one terrible second when someone loses control. Then I started thinking about those summer spoilers again, and suddenly everything began fitting together in my mind. We've already been told that Gio Palmieri saved someone whose survival isn't welcomed by everyone. That sentence has been sitting in the back of my mind ever since I first heard it. The more I compare it with everything happening around Drew, the harder it becomes to ignore the possibility that he's the person those spoilers are talking about. If Gio happens to be nearby and notices the commotion at the lake, he could become the unexpected hero nobody saw coming. I can picture him diving into the water without stopping to think, pulling Drew to safety while everyone else stands frozen in shock. Now that would be classic General Hospital. Just when somebody believes they've escaped the consequences of their actions, an unlikely hero appears and changes the entire story. What excites me most isn't simply the possibility that Drew survives. It's what happens after he survives. A rescued Drew is a dangerous Drew because he's carrying months' worth of secrets inside his head. He knows exactly what Willow did to him. He knows who helped keep him trapped. He knows the truth about the fake stroke, the paralysis drugs, and the bullets that nearly ended his life. Once he's safely out of that water and surrounded by people willing to listen, those secrets won't stay hidden for very long. And if all of this unfolds the way I think it might, we're looking at one of those turning points that General Hospital fans remember for years. Willow's desperate plan would completely fall apart. Nina could find herself haunted by one split-second decision. Geo might suddenly become the hero everyone is talking about. Most importantly, Drew would finally have the chance to reclaim not only his voice, but his entire life. Folks, I've watched this show long enough to know that the truth can stay buried for a while, but it never stays buried forever. If this rescue really happens, I believe it won't just save one man's life. It will ignite an explosion that sends shockwaves through every family connected to this storyline. And I honestly can't wait to see who is still standing when the dust finally settles.